Tonight I want to share a story that takes us to Western University in London, Ontario. It's a story about a girl named Emily and her encounter with a haunting presence that has lingered in the dormitories for decades. This is the tale of the Red Lady of Western University. Buckle up, because this one is going to blow your mind. It was Emily's first year at Western University. She was excited and a bit nervous, like any freshman stepping onto campus for the first time. The campus was beautiful with its mix of historic and modern buildings, and Emily felt a sense of pride and excitement to be there. She was assigned to a dormitory in the oldest part of the campus, a grand, ivy-covered building that had stood for over a century. Her dorm room was on the 3rd floor, and she shared it with her roommate, Sarah. They hit it off immediately, bonding over their shared love for literature and late-night horror movies. As the semester progressed, they often stayed up late, chatting and studying. One night, as they were getting ready for bed, Sarah mentioned a ghost story she had heard from some upperclassmen. "Have you heard about the Red Lady?" she asked, her eyes wide with excitement. Emily shook her head. "No, who's that?" Sarah leaned in, lowering her voice. "They say she was a student here in the 1920s. Her name was Margaret, and she fell in love with a professor. When he rejected her, she was heartbroken and ended her life by jumping from the roof of this very dorm. Now her spirit roams the halls, wearing a red dress stained with her own blood. If you see her, it means something terrible is going to happen." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. "That's just a story, right?" Sarah shrugged. "Who knows? But some people swear they've seen her. They say she appears at 3:33 a.m., the time she died." They laughed it off, but that night, Emily found it hard to sleep. She kept thinking about the story, and every creak and groan of the old buildings seemed amplified in the darkness. She finally drifted off, only to be woken by a strange sensation. It felt like someone was watching her. She glanced at her phone. It was 3:33 a.m. Her heart raced as she looked around the room, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. She told herself it was just her imagination and eventually fell back asleep. Days turned into weeks, and Emily forgot about the story. She was busy with classes, making new friends, and enjoying her time at university. But one night, something strange happened. She and Sarah were studying late when the room suddenly grew cold. Their breath became visible in the air, and the lights flickered. "Did you feel that?" Emily asked, rubbing her arms. Sarah nodded, her face pale. "Yeah, it's freezing in here." They checked the windows, but they were closed. As they sat back down, they heard a soft whisper, almost too faint to make out. It sounded like someone saying, "Help me." Emily and Sarah looked at each other, fear evident in their eyes. "Did you hear that?" Sarah asked. Emily nodded. "Yeah, I did." They decided to call it a night and went to bed. But Emily couldn't shake the feeling of unease. She kept thinking about the Red Lady and the story Sarah had told her. A few nights later, Emily was woken again at 3:33 a.m. This time it wasn't just a feeling. She saw a figure standing at the foot of her bed. It was a woman in a red dress, her face obscured by shadows. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she stared at the apparition. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. The figure slowly raised a hand, pointing towards the window. Emily followed the gesture and saw a faint, glowing light outside. She turned back to the figure, but it was gone. The room was silent and still, as if nothing had happened. The next morning, she told Sarah what she had seen. "I think I saw the Red Lady," she said, her voice shaking. Sarah's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" Emily nodded. "She was standing right there at the foot of my bed. She pointed to the window, but when I looked back, she was gone." Sarah looked worried. "Maybe we should talk to someone about this. It's freaking me out." They decided to speak with their resident advisor, Claire, who had been at the university for years. Claire listened carefully as they recounted their experiences. "I've heard the stories," Claire said, her expression serious. "But I've never seen her myself. If this is real, we need to be careful. The legend says she appears to warn people of impending danger. Maybe there's something she's trying to tell you." They thanked Claire and left, feeling more uneasy than ever. That night, Emily had trouble sleeping again. She kept thinking about the Red Lady and what she might be trying to communicate. As the days went by, the strange occurrences continued. The temperature would drop suddenly, lights would flicker, and they would hear whispers in the middle of the night. Emily started to feel like she was being watched all the time. She couldn't focus on her studies and began to isolate herself from her friends. One evening, while studying in the library, she found an old newspaper article about Margaret, the student who had allegedly become the Red Lady. The article detailed her tragic love affair with a professor and her subsequent death. But there was something strange about the article. It mentioned another student who had disappeared around the same time as Margaret's death. Her name was Catherine, and she was a close friend of Margaret's. Intrigued, Emily dug deeper into the archives, finding more articles and letters from that time. She discovered that Margaret and Catherine had both been in love with the same professor, and their friendship had deteriorated into rivalry and jealousy. The night Margaret died, Catherine had also gone missing, and her body was never found. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. What if Catherine was involved in Margaret's death? she decided to visit the old dormitory's attic, which had been sealed off for decades. With Sarah's help, they managed to find a way in through a hidden stairwell. The attic was dusty and filled with old furniture and boxes. They searched for any clues that might shed light on what had happened all those years ago. In a corner, they found an old trunk filled with letters and photographs. One of the letters caught Emily's eye. It was from Catherine to the professor, dated the night of Margaret's death. The letter revealed that Catherine had confronted Margaret on the roof, intending to confess her feelings for the professor and ask her to step aside. The confrontation had turned violent, and in a fit of rage, Catherine had pushed Margaret off the roof. Horrified by what she had done, Catherine had hidden in the attic, planning to leave the next day. But she never got the chance. The professor found her body the next morning, a victim of apparent suicide. Emily felt a wave of nausea as she realized the truth. Catherine hadn't disappeared. She had been here all along, another victim of the tragic love triangle. The Red Lady wasn't just Margaret. She was also Catherine, their spirits intertwined by the violence and betrayal that ended their lives. As they processed this revelation, the temperature in the attic plummeted, and the whispers returned louder than ever. Emily and Sarah turned to see two figures materializing before them. Margaret and Catherine, both in red dresses, their faces filled with sorrow and rage. "You found the truth," Margaret said, her voice echoing in the attic. "But the curse is not broken," Catherine added, her eyes glowing with an eerie light. "You must help us find peace." Emily and Sarah exchanged terrified glances. "What do we need to do?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. Margaret pointed to the trunk. "Burn our letters. Destroy the past that binds us here." With shaking hands, Emily and Sarah gathered the letters and photographs, piling them in the center of the attic. They lit a match and watched as the flames consumed the paper, the heat driving away the cold and the whispers. As the last of the letters turned to ash, the figures of Margaret and Catherine began to fade. "Thank you," they said in unison, their voices soft and filled with relief. Emily and Sarah stood in the attic, the silence overwhelming as the spirits vanished. They left the attic, sealing it behind them, hoping that the spirits of Margaret and Catherine had finally found peace. The strange occurrences ceased, and the dormitory returned to its normal, if slightly eerie, state. Emily and Sarah felt a sense of closure, knowing they had uncovered the truth and helped the restless spirits move on. But just when they thought it was over, Emily received a mysterious letter in her mailbox. It was dated from the night of Margaret's death, but it was addressed to her. The letter read, "Dear Emily, thank you for uncovering the truth. But the curse is not yours to break. The past is never truly gone, and neither are we. You will always be connected to us, bound by the secrets you revealed. Beware the midnight hour. We will always be watching. Yours eternally, Margaret and Catherine." Emily's heart sank as she read the letter. The horror wasn't over. The spirits of Margaret and Catherine had been freed, but their connection to Emily remained. She knew she would never be able to escape the shadows of the past. Thank you for joining me on tonight's episode of Echoes from the Dark. Until next time, stay safe and stay away from the shadows.